Welcome back to Utah's Gentleman Farmer. Today what I plan on doing is putting in an additional raised bed in this area. And what I've done is we put it down an awful lot of water to keep our lawns alive here in Utah. Utah is the second driest state in the country. So water is not cheap here, and it's also not plentiful. So I'm trying to do my part, but I'm also trying to save a lot of water. My water bills are extremely high in the summer. So what I've done again is I've turned the sprinklers off to this area, and I'm putting in raised beds. I will use a drip system which will only water the individual plant. That way I'm going to save a lot of water, and instead of having nice green grass, which we have tons of already, I'm going to have squash, cantaloupe, watermelon. I've planted some beets and some carrots. And the funnest part is I planted a lot of these with my granddaughter. So when she comes over, she loves to go out and see how the plants are doing that she and Grandpa planted. Again, building family, building traditions, building relationships. That's what a lot of this is all about. But in the process, again, we'll be saving a lot of money on water, and we'll get fruit instead of lots of lawn. I really enjoy that concept. Now, what I'm using for my corners is a pre-treated 4x4. These will support, because we're going to do wood, a 2x6 on top of a 2x6. So to support them and the pressure of the dirt against the wood, I'm using these blocks. I'm using, like I said, 2x6s. Now some people may be concerned because you can see that this is pre-treated or pressure treated wood. Now that was a problem several years ago. They used an arsenic-based preservative to pre-treat this wood. However, in the last several years they've stopped doing that so that it wasn't toxic to those who use it, especially those who have to use it every day. So I'm not concerned about this being pressure treated. Anyway, as far as the 2x6s, I listened to a greenhouse, they call it the KSL Greenhouse Show, and there's a gentleman on there who has a master's degree in horticulture, and he answers questions on Saturday mornings, and it's a really nice program. Anyway, people call in every year and say, what kind of wood should I use to make raised beds from? And they always expect him to say, oh, redwood or cedar or something like that. And he always says, well, you should use whatever wood you can get for free or cheap. And so I've done that today. I've gathered together some wood. Some of it is redwood, which I'll use as the base, because that's where it's going to be exposed to moisture and it's going to tend to rot. Some of it is going to be fir, and some of it I don't know what it is because I just picked it up. I didn't pay anything for any of this wood. I scrapped it from different sources. So that's a good way to go. It's not going to last as long as if it were cedar or redwood. That's fine. It'll last probably a good 5 years. And by then, who knows what I'll be doing with this area. I plan on making a greenhouse in this area. So let's get going on this project, and then I can get some raspberries planted for my wife. She loves raspberries. And so instead of lawn, we'll have beautiful raspberry bushes and those yummy raspberries to go with it. So as I stated, I've got this all pre-cut, pre-measured, so I didn't waste a lot of airtime. I'll also probably speed it up a little when I process it. So this is basically how you do it. Now, something that's important to note is that I'm being kind of crafty. Actually, it's my wife. She wants to create these L-shaped ones so that then when we get into the center, we're going to do a teepee to grow beans and peas and maybe even some sweet peas. You don't always have to grow food. There's nothing wrong with growing beautiful flowers to bring a sense of enjoyment and beauty to your yard. Anyway, So I'm going to start doing this real quick. The other thing to note is I have these about, let's see, I think it was 36 inches. So that's a big reach. Some of you may want, remember you can make it as long as you want, but you want to make sure that width-wise it's so that you can reach from either side and handle what you're doing, picking, weeding, whatever. So what you're going to want to do is to make sure that it's probably not as wide as I'm making these, especially if you don't have long arms. You want to make it fairly narrow so that you can easily work inside the grow box. Anyway, here we go. So at this point, of course, for the sake of speed, I only did the lower layer. But at this point, we're going to want to put the second layer on so that we have plenty of depth so that our plants can gain the root strength that they need. They can need to go down deep. Also, now most of this has died out, so I'm not too worried about it coming up through. But what I did in the others, because the grass hadn't died out yet, is I sprayed it with Roundup. Then I also put cardboard on the bottom. Just broke down a bunch of cardboard boxes and lined the bottom with cardboard so nothing would grow up through it. You can be a little more sophisticated if you want and put some of the gardening cloth down that's used as a barrier. Whatever you want to do, but in this case I don't see much problem. Most of it's lawn. I've got a little bit of bindweed, but generally I don't think that'll come up through as thick a dirt as I'm using. So that's pretty much the construction side. Later I'll do a little bit of filming on how we actually treat the soil so that it's ready to be planted in. This is the raised bed that I made earlier. Obviously, We've planted some things in it. On the left of it are some raspberries. On the right are various kinds of cucumbers. And somewhere in there, there's also sweet potatoes. So that's the addition. These are the other beds that we already had. The one closest to me has some corn, watermelon, and cantaloupe, and they're doing really well, as you can see. Over here outside of a raised bed is some corn that we've been eating on and off, and it is awesome. And over there we have some, that blank spot had carrots and beets and some radishes and spinach, but harvested those about a month and a half ago. Closest to me are zucchini squash and crookneck squash. And then there are various tomatoes on the right hand. And then, as you can tell, there's a pattern to this. So that blank spot, we're getting the blocks and other things necessary to put in another one. And then we'll probably put a diamond-shaped bed in the center. Raised beds are very successful, and I've enjoyed doing them. They're easier to weed, they're easier to water. You can plant earlier in the season with them. They're just, so this is our little garden here. I actually, as expensive as water is here in Utah in the Intermountain area, I would like to move that fence out probably another 20 feet and continue to have raised beds out there. Thank you for joining me while I built these planter boxes. It's a great way. If you don't have a lot of space, you can make even a smaller one and have the joys of growing something, and especially if you get to eat it later on. This is a great way to, no matter what your situation, if you're in an apartment, put a small planter box someplace, but grow something. It'll bring you the satisfaction that comes in the creative process and working with the soil. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the bell so that you'll be notified, share it with someone, and subscribe. Thank you. Stay physically well, mentally and emotionally.